Welcome everyone to episode 10 of Average Gamer. My name's Sully and today I'm joined by show regulars in Joe and Grant. Now today we're going to be covering three topics on the cast. The first one we're going to be covering is the Xbox Game Pass, and the second one is, are boss fights outdated? And lastly, we'll be covering, would we have more female gamers if we had more female lead characters? And to kick us off into the cast, we have Joe with the Xbox Game Pass.
I'm fairly new to this myself. I think it was only announced either yesterday or the day before. And Microsoft are going to be releasing this Xbox Game Pass, and it's going to be $9.99 a month. And I think it's $7.99 in the UK. And it's currently on preview on Xbox for people who are on the preview program, or what's it called these days? The Insiders program. And it's going to launch fairly soon, I think, with 100 games.
I think it was spring, wasn't it?
Yeah. They said spring, so I don't know what the actual date is going to be, but that's not far off, is it? And like I say, it's going to have 100 games initially. At the moment, I had a quick look at it last night because I'm on the Insiders program, and there's only a handful of games on there at the moment. Things like Gears of War, the remaster, stuff like that. And a mixture of Xbox 360 games and Xbox One games as well. Some big hitters and smaller stuff as well. And it's the same sort of model as EA Access. And I don't know if you guys know about EA Access.
I haven't dabbled with it, but
yeah, well, I actually subscribe to it, and it's not a bad service actually. And you get basically games that are made available to you. So you pay your money every month, and then you get games that are in effect free once you've paid that fee every month.
Don't you get to play certain games early as well, like new releases, like for like limited time? Or...
That's with EA Access. Whether that's going to happen with the Game Pass, I couldn't tell you. What you are going to get with the Game Pass is it's going to be like a rolling thing, whereby some games come in and some games go out. As games go out, you're going to be given the option to buy them, and there will be a discount for purchases. And while games are in the roster, you'll get a 20% discount and a 10% discount off of add-ons for those games as well. It's not a streaming service though, like EA Access.
Fuck.
Yeah, you can download those games and play them as if you'd bought them, which is...
That's music to my ears.
Yeah.
That's very good, yeah.
Yeah, apart from, obviously, you think that's a good idea, Sully, what do you think of this generally?
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, everyone's comparing it to EA Access, but I just think of it as like Netflix for video games. I browse through my catalogue of games that are on the service and I pick one up and I go and I can play or watch to my heart's content. My one singular concern with this is, and I don't think we're going to see new releases hit this service. I think it's probably going to be like, the amount of time we wait for a movie that's been in the cinemas to then come out in Blu-ray or DVD. I think there's going to be quite a bit of time before new releases hit the service. But my concern is they'll dangle a carrot in front of us. They'll drop a big game like GTA onto this service, and then 2 weeks later it disappears, and it's like, well, fuck. I was only a quarter of the way through this game, and yes, I can buy this at a discounted price, but it's kind of like, well, why do I have this subscription service, That's my one concern. I don't think that's going to happen, but you never know.
Isn't it going to be more for... I can't see it being used more for newer games because of the issues... One of the issues just raised is wouldn't there be a conflict between how a game would sell normally
definitely.
And how it would if it was put on a streaming or a service like this? Because what I looked at it yesterday, the brief sort of look that I had, it seems to be more for slightly older games.
Yeah.
That might not otherwise have sold either particularly well, or they've been out a while and it's a way of sort of reviving interest in them by having a sort of subscription model that, it's like you say, Netflix with video games is a good way of putting it, because it gives you access to this huge library of games, and you might sort of sign up for the service and then start playing one of the open world games, and you get like 20 hours into it and you think, I can either go and buy this for, whatever price it's selling for on the normal Xbox store, or I can just carry on, paying for it through this model. It's an interesting idea, I think, and it'd be interesting to see how popular it is.
I'm already hooked. I'm a day one investor. This is, to me, it's music to my ears. I would love to see this also roll over to Play Anywhere titles, maybe a little bit further down the track, because obviously at the moment we only get new titles through Play Anywhere.
If you look at EA Access, it's usually the games turn up round about 9 months after they've been released. So you usually get FIFA just before the new FIFA comes out, that kind of thing. But you are getting some good games in there. Now, I think with this, it'll be pretty much the same model. I'd be very surprised if it's not. What Microsoft need to make clear, though, is what's going to happen with games dropping off the service, as you guys have already touched on. And I think what they need to do is, if something's going to go off the service, they need to give us a heads up well in advance of time, so we can make a choice whether we're going to buy it or whether we're not. I actually think that's what they're going to do, and the reason I think they're going to do that is because that's good marketing. I think you can get people to buy the game if you give them plenty of time to decide whether they like the game or not, and then give them plenty of time whether they want to buy it at a 20% discount or not, and then tell them exactly when it's going to drop off the service. I think they'll actually make sales from that, and I think everyone will be happy.
I think that's good. I think that's a very good point with regards to how the game's marketed, and the giving them the ability to pay for it, and then it's almost like using it as a preview service in some ways, where you're playing the game for X amount of time, and then you can purchase it if you want to, if you actually want to own it.
Something I would like to see as well when you touch on preview service is how about on certain weekends or once a month they have one of the big online FPSs, like Overwatch hits the service for a weekend. So you get to play it, for the entire weekend, something like that. Just so people get a taste rather than having all these fractured kind of demos and betas that sprinkle out all over the place. Just roll it all into this one subscription, and you say you get advanced previews on games. Like the advanced preview on EA Access.
I think they've been trying that. I mean, I know on PSN they've been giving free weekends for Rainbow Six.
Yeah,
the new one, and then and like you say, I think a service like that is ideally sort of positioned in order to offer that, to promote. It can promote certain games really well, I think, and I think it's a promising service, and it'd be good to see how it develops, because I'm quite tempted. I wouldn't normally go for something like this, but I think it's tempting. What about
the price point? What do you guys think about the price? Because I was quite surprised.
For me, I think $9.99 US will be about, I don't know, just over $15. So I mean, that's what I pay for Netflix. So to me, I'm sold. I'm 100% sold.
Yeah.
This is $7.99 in the UK, and if you compare that to PS Now, that's what, $12.99?
I couldn't tell you.
And I did a video on that a while ago, saying that apart from other things, I said I thought it was way too expensive. This is exactly the same. Actually, it's about 45 pence more expensive than the Shield service that you're getting from Nvidia. Yeah,
same as Netflix as well. I pay $7.49 a month for Netflix. My personal opinion is it's very fairly priced. It's a good. It's a really quite a reasonable service, and I can see it catching on for that reason alone. Considering what you get for it. And
it's a magazine a month, isn't it? More or less.
It is.
A magazine costs you £6 or whatever.
What's a magazine?
Which magazine you buy.
I don't buy them anymore.
Yeah, what?
Because I'm with you there. I used to write for them as well.
Well, I was going to say, the only thing for me is I'm not sure how much of a service this is going to be for the likes of us, because depending on when you bought your Xbox, depending on how big a gamer you are, and depending on what games are available on the service, it may be that a lot of these games you already own. So for people who are not such casual gamers, it may be that it's not such a big deal.
I was going to say, to be completely honest, I follow gaming with a huge, massive interest. Every game I know about, I've watched it, I've read the reviews, but I only play a handful. And the only games that I do actually buy for my systems are games that I'm 99% sure I'm going to thoroughly enjoy. So a service like this really piques my interest, because a lot of the time I don't buy games because I'm not convinced, I'm not sold on them, I'm worried that I'll drop the $60 and I just won't get my enjoyment out of it. And the fact that I can browse and dabble and experiment with all these different titles, that's what has my interest, because I can...
Great point.
Sometimes you don't know whether or not you're going to enjoy it until you actually start playing it.
Yeah, I think that's the strongest appeal of the service, to be honest. The fact that it allows you to do that, and it might sway you over a game you wouldn't necessarily take a risk with normally, because like you say, the amount of money you need to put down in order to take that risk is too high. Yet with a service like this, you're ideally sort of positioned to kind of like test out games you might not otherwise bother with.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, it's good.
It works on a psychological level in a similar way to the sort of sales that you get, where you get a game that's massively reduced and you think, well, I'll dip in and have a look at that now.
Exactly.
Whereas you might not have paid for it at full price. And the great thing there is often that's how you find a game that you wouldn't necessarily have otherwise played, and you find that you really love it.
Well, the great thing for Microsoft regarding this service is, like, obviously the games that are going to be on this service are older games. There could even be original Xbox games. There's going to be 360 games. There's going to be launch games.
There already
from Xbox
are 360
One.
games.
And the point is, like, these games for Microsoft probably do stuff all sales. Yet you bundle them all together, and it's a pretty attractive package. And it's a win-win for us and Microsoft. I mean, I guess the bigger picture is what does this service look like later down the line? How does this affect the way that we traditionally buy video games? And how does this affect secondhand retail for video games as well?
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I never thought the secondhand aspect. Yeah.
Definitely impact it, won't it?
Because that's going to nip it in the butt. Like, when you think about, they're all older titles on this service. Where do you get older titles? You go down to GameStop, you go down to EB Games, you pick it out of a bargain bin for half the price secondhand.
Yeah, it will definitely have an impact on it. I think I'm just wondering how, with regards to sort of the people that allow their games to be used on this service, so like the publishers, how would they collect royalties from like a service like this? Must be quite complex, I would have thought, because it's like, is it based on how many people download their games over an X amount of period, or it's quite different, isn't it, from the regular sales model? You see,
there's quite a lot of people signing up to it.
I feel like there's more incentive for them to put their older titles on this service, because you're more likely to get downloads on these games if they're essentially free through a subscription service, rather than a lot of these older titles having to sell them on fire sales through the Xbox store or something like that. I feel like they're going to be getting played a lot more than what they would have if you had to buy them. I mean, we don't know. We're never going to find out how the structure works, but I'd imagine it would be more attractive to have your titles on the service than to let them rot away in the corner of the Microsoft store.
Yeah, I actually think they could make more money out of them this way.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
Well, they would, wouldn't they? Because like you say, they wouldn't make money out of those games until they were literally reduced down to next to nothing on a sale.
And then they'd have to be front page on the store and all that.
Yeah.
And even so, I mean, Microsoft's in a position as well where they could strong arm almost anybody they wanted to have their game on this service, I mean, with the install base the Xbox has, it'd be hard to say no to Microsoft.
But yeah, it wouldn't take much persuasion, would it? Because some of the indie titles that wouldn't necessarily have sold, probably wouldn't even have sold in full figures. If they're put on a service like this, they're going to get a little boost. I can't see how it's going to affect them negatively. They're going to,
front
get
page
some
on
sort
the
of
service.
Yeah, they're going to get a profile boost for a game that might otherwise have died or been left to rot in the bowels of the store somewhere.
That's it. And not to mention for an indie gamer as well. I mean, it's like us with YouTube. We don't do it for the money. We do it because we want people to hear our opinions and experience our content. So I mean, for them, just having people getting their content out there and experiencing it, it betters their chances of gaining traction as developers in a studio and putting their name out there attached to a product. Well,
I mean, interestingly enough, I just found out, I think it was yesterday, that YouTube are going to be offering this pay subscription service for themselves, something like 40 channels of content for $35 a month. So it's the streaming kind of model that Netflix and Amazon Prime have popularized. Is kind of becoming quite a sort of established thing now in gaming and in video. It's like reaching out into all these different areas, isn't it? And I think it's almost like the future model that a lot of companies are using.
Yeah, I mean, everybody thought streaming was the future, and here we have Microsoft going, nah, just download it and store it locally.
Yeah. It's like
the interesting thing I think there is, do you think that Microsoft have gone this route because they're looking at streaming and they're thinking it's just not there yet for gaming? And do you think that maybe this could become a streaming service down the line?
It could be an option. I personally don't think it will be. I think they've chosen to store the games locally on people's systems because they don't want to set up infrastructure. And people would rather have the game stored locally as well. So again, it's a win-win situation.
Cheaper for them and better for the gamers.
Yeah, definitely.
Not to mention as well, I could easily see people, what is Microsoft going to do next? when the Scorpio releases, they're going to have a bundle that's like a 1 terabyte bundle. And then they're probably going to release a much more expensive, along with an Xbox One S bundle, with something ridiculous like 4 terabyte hard drive. Because people are chewing through hard drive space with this service.
That's a good point, yeah.
They're going to bundle this with the Scorpio as well. They're going to give you 3 months of this free or whatever.
Oh, it's a good selling point.
There'll be yeah, exactly. Which means you've got like 100 games. By the time we get to Scorpio release, it's going to be more than 100 games. Probably by then, I would imagine it'd be more like 150 games. Because, these are going to come online fast, I would imagine. So you're going to get, the Scorpio's going to drop. One of the bundles that you're going to get with it will be, and I'll be amazed if they don't do this, because it'd be stupid if they don't. One of the bundles will be that you're going to get this service for 3 months, maybe even longer, but I would imagine probably about 3 months. You'll get a 3-month service of this. You basically got a whole library of games at your fingertips. You haven't spent a penny above the cost of the console. Boom.
That would be an absolute killer, in order to compete. If Microsoft did something like you say, that would be a really strong move for them, I think.
Personally, yeah, I'd like to see it tied directly to the Scorpio, that offer as well, that 3 month, buy a Scorpio, get a 3-month code. You have 100 games to play on your Scorpio now. That, perhaps a lot of these titles are even improved graphically as well. They've been patched or something, as well.
The thing is with this as well, that the fact that this is dropped now, just before the Switch, obviously, part of that is, let's cut off the Switch to some degree. Let's head them off at the pass. But the other thing I thought about that is, what implications does this have for E3? Because if they're dropping a big thing like this, and I think this is a big thing in terms of trying to push sales of the console, if they're dropping this now, does that maybe suggest that there might be something coming at E3 that's even bigger than that, and they want to get this out the door now? Or?
I think they would have liked to have sat on this until probably a little bit before E3 and closer to Scorpio, but I think, like you said, this is in reaction to Sony and Nintendo, and they have to have something to, drop to gain some traction.
I think it sounds like the sort of thing that would be announced at E3.
Yeah,
it's a
big deal.
But I think it's deliberate that they've moved it forward. I think, like you say, they need to because of the momentum that Sony have currently with exclusives and sales, and also the Switch is in the public eye because of the release. I think Microsoft needed to do something to get their profile, sort of back towards the front of kind of like the gaming press and media.
Well, they've been getting a lot of flack, haven't they?
Yeah, this service coincides with aggressive bundles and price cutting as well.
Yes, there's a lot of very, very aggressive, pricing of Xbox and PS4 consoles at the moment.
But when you look at what Phil Spencer's been saying publicly anyway, I actually did a video on it. I think I did a video on it. Maybe I just thought about doing a video on it.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, no, he had a tweet where he actually addressed some questions that were aimed at him on Twitter, and someone said, what have we got coming this year? Like, you have, in everybody's view and what we know about, it's going to be a weaker year than 2016, and 2016 wasn't a big year at all for Xbox. It was minuscule in comparison to what PlayStation were doing. And he said, he came straight out and said it's going to be an exciting year and we're going to have more on offer than in 2016. So obviously we've had the subscription service drop, and he was referencing first-party IPs in that tweet as well. So,
well, I wonder if they're holding some back for E3.
Yes.
Like you say, I think they are.
I think they're sitting on maybe 2 or 3 new exclusive titles, and they're going to, show them off on the Scorpio. It's going to be the selling points of the Scorpio.
Well, that's possible, isn't it?
You did do a video about this.
They might have moved some from the Xbox One to the Scorpio. It might have been deliberate.
I mean, they're going to position these titles as like how they show off the Scorpio's power, because you can't do that with games we already know about. When you look at the PS4 Pro, they had titles just saying, here's this game that's patched on the system. We're going to be seeing these games for the first time running natively on the Scorpio, and they're probably going to be dazzling.
Exactly.
And I think they've got some aces up the sleeve, and it's specifically for the Scorpio.
I think you're probably right.
Well, I think as well, their track record is that they tend to show stuff off at E3.
That's it.
And this year's a big year for their hardware. So they would be absolutely insane not to have some significant first party and maybe third party deals, whatever is coming. But there's going to be something significant that they're going to drop. If there isn't, then, well, the Scorpio's just going to be a lovely box that doesn't do a lot. They're not stupid. I mean, well, we've seen Microsoft drop bollocks before, and it wouldn't be beyond the pale for them to do something ridiculous again. But I'd be very surprised, especially under Phil Spencer. I think, given there have been a few missteps under him, but I think that their overarching, marketing approach has been a lot better under Spencer than the previous.
Yeah,
lot.
to be he's not Don Matrick, is he? He's tried to turn stuff around. He's not stood up there and gone multimedia. Watch your TV through your Xbox, blah de blah. He's tried to focus it back onto the games, and I think he's done that quite successfully.
Don Matrick. I went on a Wikipedia journey about him the other day.
Yeah,
he has not been doing well.
No, I bet he has.
At all.
He got canned, didn't he, after the debacle in 2013?
He basically got pushed out the door. He departed Microsoft. He went and worked for Zynga Games, which weren't doing fantastic at the time, but they weren't doing bad. He ended up almost sinking them completely. And then he left Zynga Games, but by his contract, he has a 3-year payout deal of $18 million.
Oh my God.
I wish I could do as bad.
He was only there for about 18 months, and he almost sunk the company as well.
So he's like Mr. Reverse Midas. Everything he touches turns to shit.
All right. So next we have boss fights, and you're covering that, Grant.
I am, yeah. So I've recently been playing The Witcher 3, and I'm on the last DLC. And spoiler warning for Blood and Wine: if you haven't played it, or you're about to get near the end of it, or whatever, I'm going to slightly spoil it. But
sorry, is Blood and Wine? Is that a new expansion?
No, it was the last expansion for The Witcher 3 that was released last year. It was like summer last year it was released. So I'm a bit behind playing it because it was just in the backlog of games. Anyway, so I got to pretty much the end of the game, and there's a boss fight. And really, The Witcher isn't really about boss fights, but there are a few scattered throughout the game. But it got me thinking that I find them really annoying as a concept, and I think for them still to be used as a way to sort of finish or tie up a game doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense in the context of the Witcher universe, because the game doesn't really have kind of any narrative justification for using boss fights. And I think sometimes they're used as like a method of finishing a game because companies don't know what else to do in order to tie a story up.
Like when you get a sundae and they're like, what the fuck do we do now? And then they try to put a cherry on top or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. But there's a fight with this guy who's ridiculously powerful at the end of The Witcher, and I had to drop the difficulty level to easy, and I still can't fucking beat him. It's like, if I can't beat him on easy, they've either not designed this properly, or I've suddenly become really shit at the game, which I don't think is true.
For everybody that's listening, and by everybody I mean Jason, Grant actually told me last night, and you might have seen this in Discord, Jason, but he can't beat the original Halo on easy.
No, I never said that. What are you talking about?
I mean, I'm paraphrasing. He was stuck on a mission on easy.
I wasn't. I play on normal on Halo, you cheeky sod.
Normal. All right, normal is easy.
Normal is easy.
You just got badly dissed there, Grant.
Right, okay. I refuse to speak anymore.
I dread to think what you make of my gameplay after that. Oh dear.
I never said anything of the sort. He's making up lies. Anyway, I'm not the only one who has problems with this fight, because it's the mechanics that are used. Basically, you're fighting a guy who you've basically been told throughout the story is unkillable, and yet they use him as a boss fight at the end of the game. That kind of makes me think that either they ran out of ideas and they thought, let's just tie this thing up, or they got sucked into this idea that boss fights are still the best way of finishing a game. No, I don't think they are. I think there's something from a bygone era, and I think.
Yeah, I do. I think they're anachronistic.
I mean, they're used obviously in Dark Souls. Uses boss fights like every other fucking mission or room you go in seems to be a boss fight. So it's just
that's almost the reason you play Dark Souls, though, isn't it? To beat the bosses.
I get the challenge of it, but I just think, if you're gonna, the reason why games have sort of evolved over the years is because in like the 80s and sort of 90s and period of gaming, games were supposed to be harder because they were sort of mechanically harder. You had games that were just more challenging, full stop. But and sort of so they threw in boss fights because they were sort of in line with the kind of games that were being made. Whereas now, if you're playing a game like The Witcher, which is more of a narrative game, it's like, well, why use a boss fight like this? It doesn't seem to make much sense. So I just wonder what you guys
also
think of it.
with limited, with limited resources that you had back then, the way of ramping up the difficulty, it was a lot harder to do. You couldn't, increase AI or whatever. You just basically had to put in some mechanic that made things more difficult. Whereas now we don't have to do that. That is absolutely not necessary anymore.
No, I don't think it is.
Well, I kind of picture like old school boss fights. I mean, I grew up on the NES and the SNES and all that, and you'd be restricted to a 2D space, and quite often a lot of SNES and NES games were platformers. And the way a boss fight would take place, it was just basically upping your skill level and requirements as a platformer. You'd almost been training like every level to get to the boss and then up your platform game. You'd be jumping over, instead of one fireball, you'd be jumping over a barrage of fireballs. I mean, for me, I kind of feel like it depends how the boss battle's handled and how it's executed. Because you can get some pretty bad boss battles. I mean, there were some of them in Gears of War 4 where,
yeah.
Overall, I enjoyed the game, but there'd be quite a few times where you'd get a boss's health down to X amount of level and you'd go in for a quick time event and you'd hit X. To me, I don't appreciate that. It feels like a cop out. There's no challenge. It's a bullet sponge and then I quick time event it to kill it and then we're in a cinematic.
Yeah, I don't know why that's become a trend as well. It's like use a quick time event to finish a boss off. It's just like
why?
That seems quite arbitrary to me.
Yeah.
It's like why throw it in? What is the purpose? Why don't you just kill it with your skill?
Yeah, I'd rather just shoot it like a bullet sponge and kill it and be done with it and skip all the quick time shit. But I mean, overall, I don't think I'm a fan or a disliker of boss battles. I more enjoy the boss battles that do challenge me from the perspective of you have to use all the skills that you've learnt along the way, and we're going to make you use them in different combinations and timings to take down the boss.
That's fair enough, but I mean, in the case of The Witcher, it was like I got the boss to the second phase. In the second phase, there's an attack he does which is completely undodgeable, and yet because I looked it up online, it said basically you cannot dodge this attack. I was like, well, surely if you're using your skills you've learned throughout the game, one of which is your dodge and one of which is your roll, if you can't use either of those in the phase of a fight, how is that actually fair?
That's just bad. That's bad boss design. That's bad
exactly.
design.
That's what I'm saying. It reminds me of this game I played years ago that I loved called Beyond Good and Evil on the Xbox 360. Basically, the game has no boss fights until you get to the very end, and you have to fight this boss. And you can't work out why you're not doing it any damage. Then somebody said you actually have to turn your controller upside down because all your controls are inverted in order to fight the boss. I'm like, what's the point of that? That's...
See, that kills the game for me because that pulls you out of the immersion. And surely when you play games, one of the great things about games is you get so sucked into it and you are in that world when you're playing it. Whether it's a scrolling platformer or whether it's a full-on, first-person, open world fantasy fest or whatever. Yeah. Excuse me, I'm bashing me.
You're getting angry, Joe.
Whatever type of game it is, you want to be immersed into it for whatever reason. And if something happens in that game that pulls you out of that, that's like, I don't know. It'd be like reading a book or watching a film or something, and then all of a sudden it changes and something completely different happens, and you're going, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't like to say "what the fuck" when I'm in the middle of the game. I like to just, play through it and be immersed.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, when you think of a company like CD Projekt Red, who are incredibly good at designing worlds, narrative, storyline, everything. Yeah, it's almost like they ran out. They didn't know how to do a boss fight, so they thought, "Oh, this is what we think a boss fight is about." And all it does is it's like Joe said, it only pulls you out of the immersion. It actually irritates you because it's so different from the main game that you've been playing. It's almost like it's like two separate games being sort of molded together.
Does The Witcher 3 have boss battles, or is this the only boss fight?
No, it does have some other ones. There's the Hearts of Stone, which was the first expansion, that had a boss fight quite near the beginning of it that was actually pretty hard. but I managed to beat that on like the second or third go. But so you do occasionally get I guess the Witcher contracts are boss battles, but they're sort of mini boss battles. You just have to use your skills to defeat them. So it's not like they're not that difficult. But then suddenly they just put this ridiculous difficulty spike because I think it's the last expansion that's right near the end of the actual story. But for me, it's frustrating because I was talking to my friend about it at Glixel. He can't actually beat that boss. He said he had to put the game down and walk away from it because, he just can't get it past the second phase. And I'm not the only I'm not the only one at all. It's frustrating because you can't see the end of the story.
Do you think CD Projekt Red were influenced by Dark Souls 3?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Because in the Hearts of Stone expansion, there's another boss battle with this guy called the Caretaker, who's exactly like a Dark Souls boss. He uses exactly the same moves. He does this whirling, spinning attack. He teleports around, which fucking annoys me in boss battles when they teleport behind you. You've got to like instantly react. I mean, this is exactly what this guy does in Blood and Wine. He's a vampire, so he'll teleport really fast around, and so you're trying to hit him. You're trying to hit him, and it's like hitting air. The time you've hit him, he's disappeared again.
Sounds annoying. Next question is though, does this make you worry for The Witcher 4? If they're being influenced by Dark Souls and they've just come off the back of 3 hits in the Witcher games, do they now drift and change up the formula too much after their third title?
Well, I don't. I think they should avoid the temptation because they've obviously caught a little bit of the influence of Dark Souls. I wouldn't say it was a huge influence, but it's obvious there's a little bit of it in there. It's obvious the devs have played Dark Souls. Let's put it that way. But I think it
never ever play other people's games when you're designing.
Well, Nintendo don't, do they? I mean, they deliberately work in isolation.
Yeah, well, exactly.
That could be the problem.
Whatever else you say about Nintendo,
could be the problem.
Well, yeah, maybe.
But my argument would be they should stick to pretty much what made The Witcher 3 successful and not be tempted to go in another direction just for the sake of it.
Too far into another genre because Dark Souls is a genre in itself.
I mean, I don't think we'll see a Witcher game for a while because of the cyberpunk. But
do you think though that what you've just said about don't stray into other genres? This kind of reminds me of the conversation we had the other week about game saves, and we kind of came to the conclusion. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that the way you use game saves is dependent on the type of game that you're putting out there. So you use different types of game saves. Do you think that sort of this might be the same sort of thing with bosses as well? That some games lend themselves more to bosses than others?
I think so.
I mean, I know, I'm not so attracted to games that have obvious bosses in them. And the sort of games I like, I'm not averse absolutely to having bosses in them, but I don't want to notice that they're bosses.
Yes, exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Horizon appeals to me because it doesn't really have boss fights from what I can gather.
I just started that before the cast, by the way.
Oh, right. Don't tell me. But yeah,
nice.
I'm waiting for it to be delivered. So
I want to get it and play it and then use the footage when I talk about Breath of the
Wild. Come on, man. You can't do that.
Well, I can't use Breath of the Wild footage because Nintendo will claim it.
On you.
You should go one further. You know how you like chucking those little labels in when you call it, you call out the game that you're playing? You should call it Breath of the Wild.
What, no, just put Horizon. Just put Horizon Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, they'll still claim it. They'll see the title and claim it.
Or just use Ratchet and Clank if you haven't run out of footage.
And then you talk about an Xbox topic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just mix it up. Go the full 9 yards. Yeah.
Yeah, someone called me out the other day, Grant, like when you said, "What? Stop using Xbox footage for your PlayStation videos." Someone else called me out for it the other day as well. When I was talking about the PS4 Pro retro-themed one through Colorway, I was using Gears of War footage again because I know you like Gears of War footage.
I love it, mate. I love it.
Yeah.
I had that happen to me with my PS4. What the fuck's going on with the PS4 video, and I used Gears of War footage in that as well, and some guy got quite irate about that.
I would use PS4 footage, but I just have no means to capture it in a way that I deem acceptable for my channel.
I deem acceptable. I
Yes.
just pressed the fucking share button. Why don't you just slum it like the rest of us?
None of this 720p sub standard HD stuff for me, mate.
Lordy da, it's not good enough for me.
It's 1440p or it's nothing.
You bloody resolution snobs, I don't know.
All right, let's finish it up because we're already at the 45-minute mark. So we'll finish with mine, which was, in a nutshell, would we have more female gamers if we had more female leads? Now, to clear it up, we did, prior to recording this episode, read a couple of articles about percentages of men to women ratios for gamers. Now, since 2012, the ratio has spiked up in favor of women, and it's actually almost level, but we believe that that's influenced by the casual market and iPhones and apps. Is that generally where we're at the moment?
I would say so, because
I'd say so.
I can't personally see that it's 50-50 with regards to console gaming, for instance.
Well, that's it. Everything I read didn't specify. It couldn't break anything down. And this was based in the US as well. So
I can believe it for casual mobile gaming. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but I mean, I believe it'd be a lot less on consoles and especially PC. I mean, there's probably like one woman in the world that plays PC, and it's probably World of Warcraft.
No, she's Korean and she plays Zarya. I've seen her.
I'm sorry, my bad.
Yeah, get it right, mate.
But yeah, I mean, the question I want to, I guess, pose to everybody is: would we have more female gamers on console and PC if there were more female leads? And if that's not the case, then what's stopping women from jumping into gaming more on, AAA hardcore gaming?
I think, judging by what I've read sort of articles by sort of female games writers, for instance. I think there's a couple on The Guardian in the UK, and they talk about how female leads influenced them when they were children with regards to being into games. I think women are definitely influenced by the characters that they play in a video game, in terms of whether it becomes more than just a hobby or an interest for them. Because I think women need to identify more closely with the character that they're playing, and I think with men, I don't want to talk generally, but for me, I don't mind who I'm playing. I don't mind if it's a female or a male character, because I'm not necessarily looking to identify with who I'm playing. I'm just sort of wanting to have an enjoyable experience, playing the game.
Some do though, don't they?
Some people do.
Some people
absolutely
get really irate.
To be honest, yeah, I prefer to play as a male lead, but I have no issue playing as a female lead, at all.
Right. Okay.
Like I'm playing Horizon Zero Dawn at the moment. I would have preferred that to have been a male.
Why is that, though, out of interest?
I don't know. I mean, I've done a video on this in the past, so I'm not sexist or anything like that.
No, I'm not saying you are. I'm just curious.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't think twice about it, to be honest.
I mean, did you feel that? Did you play the Tomb Raider games? Do you feel that when playing Tomb Raider?
I didn't, no. So I think it's because I grew up on dude bro shooters. I like the masculinity of characters, and you want to wreck shit. You want to dominate the FPS environment, and I think that's kind of somewhere burned into the back of my head. I don't know. I mean, it's hard to put my finger on it. I guess when it comes back to, you don't identify with the lead as much, but I might.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I have no issue with it. I'm looking forward to playing Horizon Zero Dawn, and I won't give it a second thought, But I could happily say that, yeah, I do prefer, if given a choice, I would play as a male.
Yeah, see, it doesn't really bother me at all.
I actually had another guy. Sorry, I was just going to say, I had a guy on actually the video that I did about The Last of Us, covering my thoughts and what had been going around, and all the drama around Ellie as being the main character in The Last of Us 2. And a guy actually came into the comments and he said he didn't care either way, but he preferred to play as a female character if it's from a third person perspective, because he just enjoyed looking at a female character rather than a male.
Well, at least
I'm like, okay, well, that's fair enough. Like, that's fair enough. He just says he likes looking at their hair and shit, and that's it. And I'm like, okay. So
that's interesting.
I guess people just have weird, wacky, burned-in subconscious reasons, I think.
But I guess there is a point there, though, isn't there, between the difference between first and third person? Because if you're playing as a first person, say, female character, but a lot of the time you're not looking at that character because of that perspective, it probably doesn't have as much of an impact as it would if you were playing in the third person and you were playing like Lara Croft, for instance. because some people do. They, that guy's a prime example. Some people obviously like looking at a female figure if they're going to be looking at them for 30 or 40 hours.
That's exactly what he said.
Yeah. So it's like, I guess the differences between women, the way women and men play video games, is that women, might need to identify with the character more from like but on a deeper level, maybe. Like I don't know.
You're right.
And yet for men, it's just surface visual. They just want to look at an attractive woman, maybe.
Yes, that's. I mean, I think that's almost a scientific fact that men are more visual, hands-on, and women are a little bit deeper than that. It's interesting. I mean, you look at the original Halo as well. Like, we know that's from a first-person perspective, so you wouldn't think it would matter as much. But we know the character's male, but the development of the original Halo, they wanted him to be as much a blank slate as possible, so you could project yourself onto him.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
I don't know. I wish I knew what you were talking about, but I can't get past the first level on that because it's just too hard.
Yeah, difficulty spike. Yeah,
it's that gun. My gun doesn't point in the right direction.
Yeah, use the B button, mate. Melee.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll try to figure it out.
Good job.
I don't know.
I mean, do you think it's like, I mean, I know listening to stories on the radio and television and stuff, when they talk about football and they talk about trying to get more Asian people to watch the game or whatever. And, they say that, if you can get more Asian kids playing the game, then it will increase the fan interaction with the game, and the more people will go and watch the game, more people watch the game on television and stuff. And it's having people to look up to as much as anything else in that. Yeah. But in gaming it's a bit different. But the idea of having not just leads, but also the idea of having women working within the industry as well.
Yeah, that's true.
And the idea that the industry is a friendly place for women to be. I mean, I know in the skeptics community, which is something that I'm quite a lurker in. I don't get involved in too much, but I read around a lot. And there's been, stuff about that, about it being a very male-centric community and it not being particularly friendly for women. Now, some people have gone too far with that, but I think there is something in that kind of thing that if you're going to break into something, if it's a particular club, it's much harder to get into. Yeah, exactly. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yes. Not so many women are in gaming, so not so many people get involved in gaming.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Jay. I think that's good. I mean, also, but I don't really want to open a can of worms here, but when you've got issues like Gamergate, it kind of like, where the male gaming community, or a percentage of the male gaming community, are so defensive about women being in the industry, you've got that's going to cause a bit of an issue in terms of women wanting to enter gaming as a profession as well. Because I'm not saying that it's a big percentage, but there's obviously a significant minority who have a real problem with women in gaming. And that's whether that's women portrayed as a character in a game or women that are directly comment either on the industry or work in the industry.
Well, that came out with the thing with Ellie,
yes.
Didn't it? With some of the things that were said then.
Yeah.
And it's going back to football again. It's the same sort of thing as when you get a female commentator or a female linesman or...
Oh, God, they get loads of abuse, don't they?
They get immense amounts of abuse, but it is, and you're right there, that it is a minority. We have to put that in perspective, because most of the gamers I come across, same with most of the football fans I come across, aren't really interested in that kind of bullshit.
No, they're not.
But there is a vocal minority, and the trouble with the internet is that those people go into their wind tunnels, they talk to each other, they shout and bawl at each other, and they convince themselves that they're the people with the voice, they're the people who are have a right to come in and say things. You've only got to go onto your own YouTube channel to hear some of the shit that people come out with.
Oh God, yeah.
And what happened with the other day with Jason, when we predicted someone was going to call him a faggot, and guess what? Two people not far later called him a faggot. And it's like so these people, they're there and they will always shout and they will always bawl. But in a way, I think that as gamers, we have to stand up and say, look, we're not putting up with this, and it doesn't mean that we have to necessarily buy into a agenda like the feminist agenda or whatever it might be. But we do have to be vocal about the fact that, would you speak to your mother like that? Would you talk to your sister like that? Would you behave in that way to people in a bar?
You wouldn't.
And if the answer's no, then stop being a fucking dick online.
Well, this is the thing. It's like people feel the internet gives them like permission to behave like complete cretins and be as abusive as possible. It doesn't. You should apply the same principles that you would in real life. Like you say, you wouldn't just go up to a stranger and call him an effing this and just be really abusive off the bat, would you? But people do it on YouTube comments or other parts of social media because they feel like there's no repercussions for it. So it's just like they feel like they've got free license to sort of behave that way. And I think sometimes they say it just to be controversial for the sake of it. I don't know if they necessarily believe that it's a bad thing to have like women in video games, but I just think they want to stir up controversy because they're bored or something. I think that's half of the problem.
Yeah, there's an element of that. And there is also a genuine, and I would, again, I have to stress this. I personally believe it's a small minority, a small vocal minority. Yeah. But I do think within that as well, there is a genuine small group of people who are genuine misogynists who genuinely do not like women. And unfortunately, they always seem to be the ones who have the bloody megaphone.
Yeah, this is it. They seem to get the coverage, or they get recognised because, but it's because they're seeking attention, though, aren't they? And if people respond to them, it's like it stokes the fire, doesn't it? So it makes it appear more visible than it maybe is, sort of generally, because of the fact that it becomes this big discussion because everyone joins in.
It's like potent material gets traction.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because it's anything controversial kind of gets, people are drawn to it like flies. It's just human nature. It's like slowing down, looking at a road accident. It's sort of a bit. You don't want to do it, but people do it anyway because it's a sort of macabre thing, and they're sort of attracted to kind of like inflammatory stuff online. And I think that's why it gets blown out of proportion. When otherwise it's not really, like you say. I don't think it is a big thing. Just generally anyway.
Flipping it though as well, I mean, almost looking at it from a completely other direction, is there an element as well that certainly a large portion of games that are out there appeal on the whole more to guys than to women, to blokes than to women?
Oh yeah.
Is that?
I think so.
I mean, because I think that we would have more women in gaming if it was a more pleasant atmosphere for them, if we had more female leads and there wasn't such a big deal made of it when we did get them.
I think so.
But I also think that even if we did that, I do still think that it's difficult to know without we're talking we're speculating, if you like. But if you did all that, if you still made it a better environment and you got rid of these asshats, I still think that you'd find that the majority of gamers would still be blokes. In the same way that certain fiction tends to be read more by women.
Yeah, I think it's. I think a lot of there's a barrier almost, between gaming and I think the mass women market. It's a perception thing. They still view it as being male oriented. And I think a lot of the experiences are geared towards men as well. And I don't think throwing a female lead into, say, I don't know, Halo, I don't think that's going to change the numbers at all. I think you almost need to start catering to them as far as actual game, from a game design perspective.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think games work on a cycle of development, and they look at everything from a marketing perspective. What's the biggest market? How can we appeal to them? And I think you're right in the sense it is a perception issue, and it's going to be very difficult to change that, in a short period of time, because the fact is males are the biggest consumers of video games. I mean,
certainly the bigger ones anyway.
Yeah, certainly bigger ones, and like Sully was saying, it would take a concerted change within the development community in order to steer it towards a more level playing field where women are sort of represented, more thoroughly in games than they have been previously. It would have to be a concerted effort made in development terms and in marketing terms as well, because you'd have to deliberately market your games at women instead of men.
I think we're a long way off that as well, because we're only just at the point now where a lot of games are either giving you the option to play as a female character or you are getting female leads, and we're still seeing all this controversy around it. So we're a long way off developers and Microsoft marketing games towards women. I think we can't even have a female lead, without causing shit.
Going back to the figures that you mentioned at the beginning, Sully, where, if you actually look at the figures and you don't break them down, it looks like, depending on the figures, it's a while since I looked at them, but with some figures, it actually looks like women are marginally more represented. If you take it overall and you look at phone gaming and tablet gaming and all that kind of stuff. But that makes me think, well, women are gaming. They're just not playing the sort of games that we're
traditional gaming
maybe playing, And that kind of makes me look at it in the same way that I would look at something like film. And if you look at film, then, you've got your action movie. Well, action movies are primarily watched by blokes, They're not watched by women. But women still watch as many movies as men. I don't know the exact figures there, but maybe even more so. And they tend to watch a different genre of movie, romantic comedy or whatever, historical drama, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, we psychologically are geared to, I will watch historical dramas as well and so on and so forth. And we cross over. There is always going to be a massive crossover. But I think in some respects there is this element that we tend to drift towards different types of entertainment.
Yeah.
So you can have as many women in gaming, but it's not necessarily that they're going to be playing these games. It's just that we will play different games, and there will be overlap, but that will,
I think you're right. But I was listening to a podcast where there was a female developer being interviewed, Nina Freeman, who was she works for Fulbright, who are doing Tacoma. They did Gone Home as well, and she was saying that she tends to play a lot of games which are like visual novels, because women. She said as a woman, she's more interested in the story, how a story develops within a game. So it follows from what you were saying about how women might watch sort of romantic comedies or certain genres of film. So they're still playing games and they're still watching films. They're just not necessarily watching or playing the sort of games that men are interested in.
Yeah, adrenaline-filled action.
Yeah, they want to play slower paced games that are more cerebral, or maybe more sort of, I don't know, more story driven and more narrative driven. I think you might find that women are more attracted to games that have a heavy narrative bias than they are to games where you have to shoot up a load of aliens. It's just like it's a very deliberate. It's like you say, they have very deliberate tastes and that are catered for within gaming in the same way that they're catered for in film. It's just, it just happens to be slightly different with some crossover, obviously, because there is bound to be crossover with games in terms of what men and women play.
Yeah, and there always will be, whatever genre you're looking at.
I think as gaming develops, everybody always talks about gaming being still in its infancy. I think as it develops more as a medium, and storytelling gets better, maybe it'll start to, even out more. But yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Because gaming has been more traditionally a male activity, I look at something, and we always come back to The Last of Us, but I look at something like The Last of Us, which is quite heavily narrative driven. And I look at my partner and I look at the sort of programs we watch together, and we watch a lot of the same things, and we like watching a lot of the same things. We, usually we're sitting there watching them together. And I actually think if she could get past the sort of mechanical elements of playing a game, in effect a first, third person mechanic, if you like, then, when I mentioned this earlier on about the fact that, she was playing Star Wars Battlefront and she couldn't actually play it at all because she didn't have that skill set, she wasn't used to doing it. But I actually think my partner, if she sat down and got into the story of something like The Last of Us, she would love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably would actually.
It's just that she doesn't like that sort of the mechanical aspect. And I think that maybe as time goes on, as more women specifically get into that side of things, as they start to engage more with the mechanics of playing a game, and we get these stories coming out that appeal to them, then we will find that more women will come into kind of, I suppose you call it, mainstream gaming, as opposed to the more sort of phone and casual type gaming that we're seeing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I might be completely wrong on that, given that casual gaming makes an awful lot of money.
Well, yeah, it does, but it's bottom of the barrel stuff, isn't it? When it comes to gaming, it's quite simplistic. I mean, I'm not trying to be snobbish there. I'm just saying it is. No, that is the type of game it is. It's quite simple, and some people like that particular style of gaming because it's very casual. That's all they want to be engaged with when it comes to games.
Different gamer altogether.
Yes.
Yeah. Different breed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we hit a lot of interesting points in that last bit, and I don't feel like we've narrowed it down much at all.
Yeah, we're always really incisive on this podcast.
Very insightful.
Yeah, we got to the heart of the subject.
All right. Well, awesome. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening to another episode of Average Gamer. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you've liked either of us in particular, we have all of our Twitter links and YouTube links down below in the description. And lastly, before I sign off, if you're a Halo player or maybe you're a pro Halo player, perhaps you'd like to give Grant some tips and tricks to beat Halo CE. Feel free to contact him on Twitter. Other than that, guys, we'll see you in 2 weeks for the next episode. See you later.